On November 8, 2010, the Pan family experienced what they initially thought was a break and enter, but was far more sinister than anyone can imagine. A dark tragedy stemming from a childhood of failed expectations. Jennifer Pan was born to Vietnamese parents Bích Ha and Huey Han Pan, who were the model of a classic Canadian immigrant success story. They were boat people in Vietnam who escaped the country in 1979 to move to Canada as political refugees. They arrived separately, but married in Toronto, and began their lives together. In 1986, they would have their first child, Jennifer, and 3 years later, their second, Felix. The two parents worked extremely hard and were adamant in their kids doing better than they ever did. They both worked in the Aurora-based auto parts manufacturer Magna International, Han as a tool and die maker, and Bic making car parts. The two immigrant parents, while not particularly educated, had a formidable work ethic and had managed to build up quite a luxurious lifestyle in Canada, which they all did in hopes of their children succeeding and becoming better than them. By 2004, Bic and Han had saved enough to buy a large home with a 2-car garage on a quiet residential street in Markham. He drove a Mercedes-Benz and his wife Alexis ES300, and they accumulated $200,000 in the bank. Crucial to this story, ultimately leading to the events that would occur later, was that the Pans were what are referred to as tiger parents. Tiger parenting is an extremely strict, regimented way of raising your kids, with a heavy emphasis on academic performance and extracurricular activities. In order to achieve excellence, however, most tiger parents usually deprive their children of anything pleasurable, such as watching TV, hanging out with friends, or playing video games, and instead force them to study for long hours with hardly any positive reinforcement for good behavior, but severe consequences for bad behavior. The parents have enormous expectations of their children, which creates a very toxic environment where they are very self-critical of themselves and believe they will never be good enough, leading to high levels of anxiety and depression. They want to live a normal social life among their peers at school. However, they are always at the whim of their parents. And while generally, tiger parents do love their kids and only push them so hard so they become successful in life, their children often don't see it that way, and many harbor a great deal of resentment towards their parents. A resentment which, if pushed far enough, could turn deadly, as the parents of Jennifer Pan would unfortunately find out the hard way. From the outside, Jennifer Pan seemed like the perfect child and student. She began playing the piano at only 4 years old, and was a champion figure skater. She had dreamed of one day being on the Olympic team. However, a severe injury unfortunately ended her figure skating career. Jennifer was under constant pressure. Her regular routine consisted of going to figure skating practice right after school until about 10 p.m., then doing her homework and studying until well after midnight, and repeating the next day. The stress Jennifer endured led her to begin cutting herself, but despite this, she maintained appearances at school. A close acquaintance of hers at the Mary Ward Catholic Secondary School in North Scarborough referred to her as a social butterfly with an easy, high-pitched laugh, who mixed with guys, girls, Asians, Caucasians, jocks, nerds, and people deep into the arts. While Jennifer had been a star student in elementary school, the pressure in the later years of her life had gotten to her, and her grades were slipping. Midway through grade 9, her grades were in the 70s range, which is around the high C's to low B's in Canada. Terrified of what her parents would think about these unacceptable grades, she began to forge her own report cards. Using old report cards, scissors, glue, and a photocopier, she created new report cards, showing her earning straight A's. This added to her overall level of stress, because she knew at any time her parents could call the school and her lies would be unraveled, landing her in trouble she couldn't even fathom. In 11th grade, Jennifer would meet Daniel Wong, another key player in this story. They hit it off in 2003 after a performance in a concert hall in Europe, and began dating that summer in secret from her strict parents. Around this time, Jennifer had received early acceptance into the prestigious Ryerson University in Toronto. However, they later withdrew this offer as she failed calculus in her senior year at high school. At this point, Jennifer began to panic, as she was terrified of her parents digging into her school records and finding out that she had lied to them for so long. So she began to spin yet another web of deceits in order to escape the wrath of her parents. She forged an acceptance letter from the school, saying that she was accepted and would be starting at Ryerson in the fall. She said her plan was to do 2 years of science, then transfer over to the U of T's pharmacology program, which was her father's hope. When tuition came up, Jennifer lied to her parents yet again, claiming she received a scholarship for $3,000 and an OSAP loan, again forging both documents. This was an unimaginable stretch, considering Jennifer had never even properly finished high school. When September came around, she would pack up her book bag and head to the subway like she was going to school, and her parents were none the wiser. Instead of going to school, however, Jennifer would go to public libraries, where she would research relevant scientific topics relating to her field of study and fill her books with copious notes. She'd spend her free time at cafes or visiting Daniel at York University, where he was taking classes. She picked up a few day shifts as a server at Eastside Mario's in Markham, taught piano lessons, and later tended bar at Boston Pizza, where Daniel worked as kitchen manager. At home, Han often asked Jennifer about her studies, but Bick told him not to interfere. Let her be herself, she'd say. After pretending to attend Ryerson for 2 years, her father asked her if she was still planning to switch to U of T. She said yes, and that she had been accepted to the pharmacology program. Her parents were thrilled. She suggested moving in with her friend Topaz downtown for 3 nights a week because of the very long daily commute. Bick sympathized with Jennifer over this and convinced Han that it was a good idea. However, Jennifer never really did stay with Topaz. Monday through Wednesday, she stayed with Daniel and his family at their home in Ajax, a large house on a quiet street. Jennifer lied to Daniel's parents as well, telling them that her parents were okay with the arrangement and brushing off their repeated requests to meet Han and Bick over dim sum. This would continue for another 2 years, until it was time for her to theoretically graduate from university and earn her degree, had she actually been going, of course. Yet another milestone in her life that was completely fabricated. In order to fake her graduation, Jennifer and Daniel hired someone they found online to create a fake transcript full of A's. When it came to the ceremony, Jennifer told her parents that the extra-large class size meant there were not enough seats. Graduating students were only allowed 1 guest each, and she didn't want one of her parents to feel left out, so she gave her ticket to a friend. While having done this for the wrong reasons, one would have to admit that her string of lies was quite impressive, almost professional. Not only had she faked the majority of her high school years, but also her graduation from a prestigious university. This wasn't lying about going to a party or skipping a few classes. She had managed to completely fabricate 4 years of her life. However, unfortunately for her, the charade did eventually come to an end. While supposedly studying at the U of T, she had told her parents that she was volunteering at the blood testing lab at Sick Kids again, to paint herself as the perfect daughter in the eyes of her parents. The gigs sometimes required late-night shifts on Fridays and weekends, so she suggested spending more of the week at Topaz's. At this point, Han had begun to suspect something was up. He noticed that Jennifer had no uniform or keycard from Sick Kids. So the next day, he insisted that they drop her off at the hospital. As soon as the car stopped, she sprinted inside, and Han instructed Bick to follow her. Realizing that she was being tailed by her mom, Jennifer hid in the waiting area of the ER for a few hours until they left. Early the next morning, Jennifer's parents called Topaz, which is where her years of lying would finally come to an abrupt end. Topaz revealed Jennifer wasn't there, and in fact she hadn't seen her in months. When Jennifer finally came home, Han confronted her. She confessed that she didn't volunteer at Sick Kids, had never been in the U of T's pharmacology program, and had indeed been staying at Daniel's, which was still technically only a half-truth, as she didn't tell them that she had never graduated high school and that her time at Ryerson was also a complete fiction. Upon hearing this news, Han was absolutely livid, and he told Jennifer to get out and never come back, but Bick convinced him to let their daughter stay. They took away her cell phone and laptop for 2 weeks, after she was only permitted to use them in her parents' presence and had to endure surprise checks of her messages. They forbade her from seeing Daniel. They also ordered her to quit all of her jobs except for teaching piano and began tracking the odometer on the car. For the following 2 weeks, she was housebound, her mother by her side nearly constantly, essentially under a sort of informal house arrest. Over the spring and summer of 2009, she snuck calls with Daniel on her cell phone at night, whispering in the dark. Eventually, she was allowed some measure of freedom, and she enrolled at a calculus course to get her final high school credit. She was still seeing Daniel. However, her parents discovered when she snuck out one night but had her mom's wallet. In the morning, Bick went into the room to get it and discovered Jennifer was gone. Bick and Han ordered Jennifer to come home immediately. They demanded that she apply to college. She could still be a pharmacy lab technician or nurse, and told her once again that she had to cut off all contact with Daniel. While Jennifer was still deeply in love with Daniel, he had begun to grow weary of their secret relationship. He told her she was still too old to be sneaking around, and to get her life in order because she was 24 at the time. He did not want to keep up this charade any longer, so he broke off their relationship, which left Jennifer completely heartbroken, as he was her first love and a big part of her life. Shortly thereafter, Jennifer had learned that Daniel had begun seeing another girl named Christine, which made her very jealous. In order to discredit Christine and win Daniel back, she concocted an extremely bizarre story. He told her a man had knocked on her door and flashed what looked like a police badge. When she opened the door, a group of men rushed in, overpowered her, and gang-raped her in the foyer of her house. Then a few days later, she said, she had received a bullet in an envelope in her mailbox. Both instances, she alleged, were warnings for Christine to leave Daniel alone. In the spring of 2010, Jennifer reconnected with Andrew Montemayor, a friend from elementary school, who was known as a troublemaker. According to Jennifer's later evidence in court, he had boasted about robbing people at knife point in the park near his home. When Jennifer told him about her torturous relationship with her dad, Montemayor confessed that he'd once considered killing his own father. This set off a spark in Jennifer's mind, who began imagining how much better her life would be without her father around. Montemayor introduced Jennifer to his roommate, Ricardo Duncan, over bubble tea in between her piano lessons. According to Jennifer, they hatched a plan for Duncan to murder her father in the parking lot at his work, a tool and die company called Kobe Enstel, near Finch and McCowan. She says she gave Duncan $1,500, earnings from her piano classes, and they agreed to connect later by phone to arrange the date and time of the hit. But Duncan had stopped answering her calls, and by early July, Jennifer realized that she had been ripped off. Around this time, Jennifer had to come back into contact with Daniel, texting daily. Upon learning that Duncan had ripped her off, the two devised a far more sinister plan. They'd hire a hit on both of her parents, collect the estate, which would be about $500,000, and live together without the constant fear of her parents. Daniel gave Jennifer a spare iPhone and a SIM card, and connected her with an acquaintance named Lenford Crawford, whom he called Homeboy. Jennifer asked what the going rate was for a contract killing. Crawford said that it was $20,000, but for a friend of Daniel's it could be done for $10,000. Jennifer was careful to use her iPhone for crime-related conversations and her Samsung phone for everything else. On Halloween night, Crawford visited the Pans neighborhood to scout the site. Kids in costumes running up and down the street were the perfect cover. On the afternoon of November 2nd, the plan took an unexpected turn. Daniel texted Jennifer saying that he felt as strongly about Christine as she did about him. Suddenly everything was thrown into question. She texted Daniel, "So you feel for her what I feel for you? Then call it off with Homeboy." Daniel responded, "I thought you wanted this for you." Jennifer replied to Daniel, "I do, but I have nowhere to go." Daniel wrote back, "Call it off with Homeboy? You said you wanted this with or without me." Jennifer, "I want it for me." The next day, Daniel texted, "I did everything and lined it all up for you." It seemed Daniel wanted out of the arrangement. But within hours, they'd reverted to their own ways, texting and flirting. Later that day, Crawford texted Jennifer, "I need the time of completion, think about it." Jennifer wrote back, "Today is a no-go. Dinner plan's out, so won't be home in time." Over the following week, there was a flurry of text and phone conversations between Daniel, Jennifer, and Crawford. On the morning of November 8th, Crawford texted Jennifer, "After work okay, will be game time." That evening, Jennifer watched Gossip Girl and John and Kate Plus 8 in her bedroom, while Han read the Vietnamese news down the hall before heading to bed at about 8:30 p.m. At approximately 9:30 p.m., Vic came home from her line dancing class, changed into her pajamas, and soaked her feet in front of the TV on the main floor. At 9:35 p.m., a man named David Mile Vagenham, a friend of Crawford's, called Jennifer, and they spoke for nearly 2 minutes. Jennifer went downstairs to say goodnight to Vic and unlock the front door. At 10:02 p.m., the light in the upstairs study switched on and switched off a minute later, which was a signal for the men that it was time. Moments later, Crawford, Mile Vagenham, and a third man named Eric Carty walked through the front door, all three carrying guns. One pointed his gun at Vic while another man ran upstairs, shoved a gun at Han's face, and directed him out of bed, down the stairs, and into the living room. Upstairs, Carty confronted Jennifer outside her bedroom door. According to Jennifer, Carty tied her arms behind her using a shoelace. He directed her back inside, where she handed over approximately $2,500 in cash, then to her parents' bedroom, where he located $1,100 in U.S. funds in her mother's nightstand, and then finally to the kitchen to search for her mother's wallet. One of the assailants pistol-whipped Han on the back of his head upon hearing that he only had $60 in his wallet. Vic began weeping, pleading with the men to not hurt their daughter. One of his intruders replied, "Rest assured, she is nice and will not be hurt." This is one of the most heartbreaking parts of the story. The fact that Jennifer's mother went out of her way to protect her daughter during the attack, not knowing it was her orchestrated at all. Carty led Jennifer back upstairs and tied her arms to the banister, while Mile Vagenham and Crawford took Vic and Han to the basement and covered their heads with blankets. They shot Han twice, once in the shoulder and then in the face. He crumpled to the floor. They shot Vic 3 times in the head, killing her instantly, then fled through the front door. Jennifer then made this frantic 911 call.
"What's your name?"
My name is Jennifer.
Someone just broke in?
Someone broke in and I heard shots like pops. I don't know what's happening. I'm tied upstairs.
Does it sound like gunshots?
I don't know what a gunshot sounds like. I just heard a pop.
34 seconds into the call, the unexpected happens. Han can be heard moaning in the background. He had awoken, covered in blood with his wife's body next to him, and crawled up the stairs to the main floor.
I'm okay. My dad just went outside screaming.
Do you think your mom is downstairs too?
I don't hear her anymore.
Jennifer yelled down that she was calling 911. You can even hear in Jennifer's tone that she is surprised that her father was still alive. Han stumbled outside, screaming wildly, and encountered his startled neighbor leaving for work in the driveway next door. The neighbor called 911. Police and an ambulance arrived at the scene minutes later, then Han was rushed to a nearby hospital, then airlifted to Sunnybrook. York Regional Police interviewed Jennifer just before 3 a.m. She told them that the men had entered the house looking for money, tied her to the banister, and then proceeded to take her parents to the basement and shoot them. 2 days later, the police brought her in again to give a second statement. At their request, she demonstrated how she contorted her body to get her phone out of her waistband to place a call while tied to the banister.
You're now bound to the railing. Can you show me, can you stand up and turn around and tell me, just show on the camera, how your hands are bound? And how you are against the railing. You don't have to sit down, I just need to see how you were.
Just tell you.
The only reason that I'm trying to, I need to do this is that I'm also going to ask you is that so take this back take it out of a traumatizing event, which it is, and put yourself into a more clinical position, because I want to see how you could physically get your phone out of your waistband. We're obviously going to need to know that. It's very important. So traumatize away, now put yourself into just a state of, I need to mechanically show how I can get access to my phone. Okay, because that's obviously very relevant. We know you made the phone call, but questions are going to obviously raise is that if my hands are bound and I'm against the railing, how do I talk to a 911 operator? Okay, so clinically, this is now a clinical demonstration. Just stand up, focus in on how you did it, and I want you to stick that in your waistband as an example. Okay, so just take your sweater off, because this will be a very smooth, very quick thing. It's a one-time demonstration. I'm not going to ask you to repeat it, but I need to go through it. Okay, so just take your sweater off. Put this in the side that you believe it was in. Great. Turn around so that you're looking away from me. You're looking exactly like, now here is where the banister is. Put your hands back behind your back, exactly how you remember they were. Okay? Now, and are you restrained from movement? How far can you move your hands from the banister?
They tied my upper arm
Yes?
around the banister,
Yes?
but my hands were bound together.
So your hands bound together, and this is the arm that's the strings wrapped around against the banister?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so now how can you get to the phone? And how do you make the phone call? 911.
Mm-hmm.
And do you talk down like that?
Yes, I'm yelling at the phone like this.
And how can you hear?
I turned the volume on max.
Yes? So that's exactly the way that you're talking to her against the railing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's good enough. Sit down. Put your...
At this point, detectives began picking up on the inconsistencies in Jennifer's story. The obvious one was, how could she call 911 if her hands were bound? Next, how did the gunmen get in the house in the first place, as there was no sign of forced entry and they were not seen to be carrying any tools such as crowbars? Also, if this was a simple home invasion robbery, why did the gunmen not take much, especially considering the keys to both of their luxury cars were in plain sight? And again, if this was just a robbery, why would they brutally attempt to murder both parents execution style when they were being perfectly cooperative? And finally, why would they leave Jennifer completely unharmed when she was a witness to the entire event? By November 12th, Han had woken up from his 3-day induced coma. He had various broken bones and bullet fragments lodged in his face. His memory, however, was very keen, and he brought to light 2 disturbing details. He recalled seeing his daughter chatting softly, or like a friend as he put it, to one of the intruders. And also that her hands were not in fact bound when she was being led around the house, as she told police. On November 22nd, the police brought Jennifer in for a 3rd interview. This interrogation took a far more accusatory tone, where Detective William Goetz was no longer sympathizing with her and trying to find out what happened. He knew that she was involved and wanted her to confess.
You were part of setting this plan in motion, right? You were behind this, right? You have to get it off your chest, Jen. It's killing you. Get it off your chest, and we're going to talk it out here. We're going to understand, and we're going to get this pressure off you, because that's what you need right now. Do the right thing now, Jen. We already know. You're not going to surprise me here. Okay, I already know what the answer is. And I can't stand to see you go through this any longer. You've been a physical wreck because you know that you haven't been truthful with us. A lot of things that you said are true, but there's so many more that aren't, and you're leaving so much information out. We know that. You have to sit there and ask yourself, yes, he knows. Bill knows. Everyone knows. But what you have to do now is get the strength in you to tell us why it happened. I have some pretty good reasons there why it happened. Like, to me, it was a form of abuse here. Because you can't do that to a person. You can't. This is Canada. We're in the 21st century here. You cannot take everything out of a person. You can have expectations for your kids, but you can't expect them to do everything the way you want it. Okay? It's just like your dad said about it, fixing everybody else's home, but not fixing his own. Okay? It's the same with you. Okay? He was trying to make a future for you bigger than it should have been. And in the process of his love for you, he made the mistake of actually pushing you away. Right? All his good intentions. What happened? All his good intentions went the other way because he made too high of expectations on a young woman. And now's the time to get it out in the open here. Right? You know the importance of telling the truth when it really counts. And you know what it does to you as a person when you have to deny things that you know are true. Right? It doesn't feel good, does it? Jen, you have to let me know what happened here. Okay? Okay, but you were involved. Right? That's the part we need. Okay? We need to hear that from you because we know you were. We're going to talk this out and figure out what happened. I'm going to make it easy on you, Jen. All you have to do is tell me that you were involved, right? I'm right, aren't I? You know it. We know it. It's plain as day. I'm 100% correct here. I wouldn't be sitting here saying this if it wasn't Jen. Okay? We have to get through this. You have to get through it. Yes, people came into your house that night. Yes, that part's true. The descriptions you've given, you've held back. You haven't been straightforward. Okay, I know that. Okay? No, you haven't. Okay, we know that. Okay? Let's get it out on the table here, Jen. Okay? It's not true. Okay? You were involved in this, right? You knew before that night that this was going to happen. I'm going to make that easy on you. That's a true statement, right? You knew before that night that they were coming, right? That's all I need, Jen. Let's get the truth out here now. You knew before they came that they were coming, right? Right? Be honest with me, Jen. Give me that. Right? You knew before they got there that they were coming. Right? Now, the good thing is here that you didn't actually shoot anybody. That's a positive in this situation. Because you couldn't do that. You're not that type of person. Right? And a lot of people do that. A lot of kids make the mistake of going out and doing it themselves, okay? You couldn't do that, I know that. Jennifer, you don't need to live with this pain anymore. Let it out. Look at me, Jen. Let's be honest with each other. I've been nothing but honest with you here today, and I hope you can do the same with me. I'm here to listen. Jen? It's not worth it anymore. It's hurting you.
What happened?
I need to know the details. I can't even say. But I can tell you one thing is that we already know, so you can't change that.
Then why did it stop?
I know you did. But it got too far ahead of you, right? You didn't think this far ahead, did you? But once they started, once they came in, you couldn't stop it, could you? Could you? Jen? Hmm?
I wanted it to stop.
I know. Why didn't they stop for you?
I didn't know who they were.
But you were part of the planning, right? You have to tell me that part, and then we're going to work through it together. Do you know what I'm saying? You didn't want this, you wanted to stop it. You have to prove that to me now. Because at the end of the day, we have to stop this from happening to someone else. Right?
What happened to me?
Jen, we're going to have to deal with it one step at a time, okay? I'm going to be honest with you. I need to know what you did. And then you and I are going to work through this together. Because the most important part of this whole thing is that we do the right thing for your mom. Right? I am her voice right now. I'm working for your mom. That's my job. And I have to get to the bottom of this for your mom. But I need you with me on it. Okay? I want you to step back for a minute and think, what would your mom want you to do right now? And I know she's a good woman, and she's taught you all your life that, Jennifer, no matter how bad it gets, no matter what you've done wrong, you can come to me and tell me, and I'll understand, right? And you need to talk to me.
But the descriptions I gave you, that's
Okay,
what I
but let's get back to how they got there, why they got there, okay? Because we know that you helped get this thing in order, right? That's what we need to start with. Then we're going to work through the case, okay? But we got to start,
But what happened to me?
well, I don't know at this point, okay? Because I don't know what you're going to tell me other than that you were involved, but I need to hear it. Okay? But I can tell you one thing. I'm going to sit here as long as it takes for you to get this off your chest, okay? Do you know what I mean?
Do it.
What's that? Okay, you need to tell me how you got involved in this. We know that, Jen. We need to talk about that. Okay? You wanted it to stop, then you have to stop this right now. Okay? Because this needs to stop. You can't go around like this anymore. Hiding secrets from your own family. They know. Jen, they know. They're not going to be surprised. What they're looking for you to do right now is to do the right thing. That's what I'm looking for. That's what you're looking for. Right? You know what? What I tell people is just tell the truth. Okay? And we're going to sit down here and we're going to get to the bottom of it. Okay? Together. Okay? How did it start? And I'm talking before that day. How did it start before that day? How did this thing get in motion? There was a plan ahead of time, and I want to know about the plan. You can do that. Okay? Be strong, Jen. What you have to remember is that we're not offside here. Okay? We know already that it happened. There's absolutely no doubt that you were involved in this, or we wouldn't be sitting here right now. You've been waiting and wondering when the police were going to ask you or tell you this. You thought it was going to happen the last time you were here, right? Stay with me, Jen. Let's get through this. You're sorry you're out now, are you not? You wish you could take it back? Jen? Okay, that's good to hear. That's so positive. wish it didn't happen, right? That night you wish you'd never got this plan in motion, right? Right? You wish you never told anybody to do this, right? Ken? You gotta get it off your chest. You felt cornered. You felt like you didn't have any other option. You didn't have another option, did you? At the time, you felt like this was the only thing you could do. The house rules were just so out of whack. And you know that because look at all your friends. Look at all the people around you. Does anyone else have a curfew for 9 o'clock at 24 years of age? You had no choice here, Jen, I know that. And anybody else in your situation would have done the exact same thing. The only thing different is I would say that they'd have done it a lot earlier. They would have looked for a way of, you've tried everything. You've told them, but no one listened. You need to get it out first, and then we're going to sit down and we're going to discuss this so that justice for your mom gets done. That's your priority, isn't it?
But I told you
Okay.
descriptions of what I remember
Okay.
and everything.
Okay, but that's not everything, okay? You weren't straightforward with that, okay? You know that and I know that, right? You didn't give us everything. You misdescribed the
No,
guy, yes.
everything.
Jen, we're past that, okay?
But what
That's
I
not
said is what I remember
Okay.
about them, like
Okay,
how I
but,
remembered them.
okay, but it's impossible because we have another witness. Your dad was right there, okay? And there's no way that you could get those descriptions mixed up, okay? We know that, okay? So let's not go there. You need to tell me how you made this plan. That's all that's missing here. The rest, we know what happened. I don't need you to tell me what happened in that house. I already know. Okay? I'm not going to go through that again. Okay? You have to help me here. We need that justice for Mom now, right? It wasn't supposed to be Mom. Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah.
Okay. What about your dad?
What was supposed to be that was supposed to be me.
Okay, why was it supposed to be you?
So that everyone could be free from me.
Okay. So, why did it happen this way then?
I don't know.
Okay. How did they get there?
I don't know.
You knew they were coming though, right? Because you said it was supposed to be you, right? So what had you done ahead of time to make them come there? Why was it supposed to be you?
That everyone could be free from me. Because I was disappointed in everything.
Okay. But why did it have to happen this way? Yeah.
Because when I tried suicide, I failed.
When?
A couple months ago.
What did you do?
A whole lot of coke. I couldn't do it. It's not the thing.
Okay. So who did you get to do this then?
I don't know who he is. I just got his number.
And what did you say to him?
It was supposed to happen like this.
Okay, I appreciate that. How did it happen? How did they get there?
I don't know how they got there.
What was your request?
Come in and take me up.
Okay, well, he's not going to show up at your house randomly. You're going to have to know exactly when he's coming. So how did that play out?
He texted me game on.
Pardon?
He texted me game on.
When did you get that text? How many minutes before they came in? Okay, let's get it in. We're working through it. How many minutes before?
I don't know. I didn't even realize they were in.
Okay, but they did come in, right? How much before you heard anything?
Maybe an hour, 2 hours?
So you were just waiting there for 2 hours?
Yeah. I was watching TV.
Who else knows about this?
Me and the people who did it.
Okay. And who are they?
I don't know who they are. He just said, let me do me, and then that was it.
Okay. So he does come into the house, and you're the obvious only young girl there, right? Okay. When he came to your room,
Yes.
what discussions did you have with the guy that came to your room? The real discussions you had, not what you told us.
Just where was the money? And I showed him where the money was.
Okay. But he obviously said, I'm here to do what you asked.
He never said anything like that.
What did he say?
Just like hands behind your back.
Okay. Can you sit up for a minute, Jen? Okay, look at me. Look at me. Okay. We have... Remember everything I told you about what I do for a living? Okay. I'm an expert in determining truth and half-truths. Okay. What you've just told me is half the truth. Okay? Now, what I do believe is that you went to somebody. And I do believe that night you paid them the $2,000. Okay? That's the true part. Okay? Right? But what's not true is it was never for you. Okay, Jen, no. Okay, you went to this person and you asked them to do a job. And the job was for your parents. Okay, that's what we got to get to here. Okay? I know that's what really happened, Jen. Because of how you've been treated for the last 7, 8 years of your life, you no longer know how to tell the whole story, the truth from the start, okay? You've been conditioned just to tell little bits of the truth and little bits about lies, right? That's what you've done for 8 years now. They were there because you gave the order, okay? And I understand why you gave the order, because you couldn't do it yourself. Okay? That's good. Okay? Jen? Okay, but they were supposed to take your parents, Jen. And they did that part. Okay? Nobody needs, if you wanted to kill yourself, Jen, you're not going to pay somebody $2,000 to do it.
I couldn't do it myself.
Okay.
So.
But there's other ways, okay? And if that was going to happen, they could have taken you outside and done it anywhere. It wouldn't matter, would it? Okay, there's no need to involve other people in this. If you really wanted to die, all they would have had to do is pull up beside you in a car and shoot you. Right?
Like he told me just to let him do it.
Okay, but you're not going to accept that, okay? You're not going to accept that he's just going to randomly do it someday, okay? There's other things that happened in this case, Jen, okay? You let them in the house. You let them in. We know that. You went downstairs and you opened that door for them. Okay, now did they tell you to do that?
Yes,
So what else did they tell you to do?
that was it, just to make sure that they had access.
Okay, so what was the agreement then?
What do you mean? I
Well,
told you $2,000 and they were supposed to kill me, and then they called me and made sure that they had access.
okay, so how did they do that though? What was the question on the phone? Was it a text or a phone message?
Text, VIP access.
What does that mean?
I didn't know, and then he said just make sure they can get in.
They came up to your room. Or somebody came up to your
Well,
room.
like I said, I heard my mom call from my dad, and that's when I went out.
Yeah. And what happened?
And then he was there, standing there.
Okay, give me 1 sec, okay? So, we get to the point where you get the text message. What were you expecting to happen next?
I honestly, I don't know. Because he didn't tell me anything, he just said, let me do me, but I didn't know how he was going to do anything.
Okay? Most of what happened in the house happened, okay? We know that, okay? You gave a description of a black guy with dreads. There was no black guy with dreads in there. Okay, we know that. Okay, we know that because your dad's not going to miss that. Okay, he gave a good description of the guy that you were with, and he's not even black. So tell me about that.
Honestly, like,
Honestly, Jen, that's exactly. You got to be upfront here. Okay,
honestly, that's
because
the
obviously you didn't want to tell us everything because there was a plan. You didn't tell us that night either. Okay, so
everything
now
else that happened
okay,
after that is.
that guy with dreadlocks was never there. Okay, so why did you say that?
But that's what I remember.
Okay, you can't mix that guy up with the description your dad gave. You're not even the same color. Right?
But that's
Tell me why you said guy with dreadlocks.
because that's who I
Because there
saw.
was no guy with dreadlocks there, Jen. That's the problem here. Okay? That's the problem. Okay, now, the issue here is this, and you have to look at me. Okay? Your dad wasn't supposed to be a witness. Okay? That's where this whole thing went wrong. Okay? Your dad wasn't supposed to live. Okay? And when he did live, he was able to tell us what really happened that night. Okay? Which was in conflict with what you told us. Okay? Seriously in conflict. Okay? You had all these things about number 2 going upstairs and everything else. Number 2 was down there with a gun on your mom. Number 3 was down. He didn't. Okay? We know that never happened. Okay? I don't want to argue about it. Okay? I'm not going to argue about
But
it.
I've already gone this
Okay.
far.
You've
I'm
gone this
telling
far,
you-
but that doesn't mean, okay, what, now, let's get it all straightened out, because this is a total half and half. We're there again, just like the school, just like everything else. This is how you deal with pressure, okay? You give half and you hold half. You give half and you don't give the rest of the true facts, okay? Now, in the original story, you said that you hid your cell phone, okay? If it was for you, you wouldn't have hid your cell phone. That would have never happened. So it's in conflict.
It's not hidden. It's just I put it there naturally.
Okay.
It's what I naturally do.
Okay, but you said on tape that you hid it there and that they didn't know about it. That's your language, not mine, Jen. Which tells me that you intended to use it sometime to get out of there. Nobody shows up at your house for no reason and kills the wrong people. Okay? That's where we're at here. Okay? That's
I'm
what you're
telling
afraid.
you,
You're
I
afraid to
couldn't
say
not-
that you made that mistake. Don't be afraid, Jen. Just tell the truth. Okay? Because we're getting into what's happened to you all your life. Okay? I know exactly when you're not telling me exactly what happened. Okay? You got to give us some credit here. This is all that I do. Okay? And you're halfway to telling the whole truth. Okay, this is another case of making something up in hopes that somebody will listen and accept it, okay? I can't accept it. Okay, you know that and I know that. The good thing about this is your dad did live. Okay, he wasn't supposed to make it through, and he did. So that's a good thing. Right? That's a positive in this situation. Jen?
My dad's hurt. How can that be a positive?
Okay, but he's not dead, is he?
No.
Okay? And this thing started out with him supposed to be dead. Okay? Jen, there's just no doubt about that. Okay? There's no doubt about that. Okay? And you got to remember, we're all over this case, okay? And when you say something that's going to contradict what other people tell us, okay, that the order was for mom and dad, that's not going to look good, is it? When it comes from someone else. If you could make this decision over, you would change it. Okay? You would change it. Right?
Of course. If I knew who was going to get hurt, of course
Okay.
I wouldn't.
Jen, you knew who was going to get hurt. That's the whole issue here. Okay? That's the whole issue here. That's all we're dealing with here. At the end of the day, you have to look at yourself and say, when Bill came to me with the answer, did I deal with it? Okay? Because that's where people are going to be looking at you now from. They're going to be saying, what did she do when the police knew and confronted her with the truth? Did she face reality and admit the truth? Or did she run from it? I want you to tell me that you made the plan for your parents.
But
Okay?
that's
We're
not-
going to get to the rest of it anyways. Okay? We already, like, I'm in here. Okay? There's 20 other investigators on this case. I'm only dealing with the truth as it regards to you. Okay, there's a lot more things that you don't even know that I know. That's why you're not going to be able to tell me things, okay, that I don't know already. Okay, so I will know when you're telling me the full truth. I already know you made the plan, so I can't just say, okay, yeah, don't worry about it, you made the plan for yourself, when I know that's not true, okay? You got to know that I already have the answers, okay, or we wouldn't be sitting here. Can we understand each other, Jen? Okay, you've told so much of the truth, you're just not telling the final portion. This isn't even half-truths anymore, this is 3/4, okay? The only thing missing is 1/4 of the truth, okay? Tell me what happened.
I told you what happened.
Okay, all of it.
You did.
Okay, all you have to do is tell me right now that, Bill, yes, I made a mistake.
Bill, yes, I made a mistake.
This plan was for my parents. That's that's the only issue here. Not about everything that happened that night. We know what happened that night, okay? But we also know that you made this plan for them, not yourself.
Over the 4 hours of interrogation, Jennifer attempted to use her deception tactics yet again as she had her whole life. However, they could not save her this time. She fabricated a completely absurd explanation that the attack had been an elaborate plan to commit suicide gone horribly wrong. She had given up on life but couldn't manage to kill herself, so she hired Homeboy, whose real name she claimed not to know, to do it for her. In September, however, her relationship with her father had suddenly improved, and she decided to call off the hit. But somehow, wires got crossed, and the men ended up killing her parents instead of her. Police arrested Jennifer on the spot. In the spring of 2011, relying on analysis of cell phone calls and text, they apprehended Daniel, Mile Vaganum, Carty, and Crawford, and charged all 5 with first-degree murder, attempted murder, and conspiracy to commit murder. Jennifer would go on to receive a life sentence with no chance of parole for 25 years of the murder of her mother, and another concurrent life sentence for the attempted murder of her father. The other 4 defendants received the same sentence. During his impact statement, Han would say, "When I lost my wife, I lost my daughter at the same time. I don't feel like I have a family anymore. Some say I should feel lucky to be alive, but I feel like I am dead too." He is now unable to work due to his injuries. He suffers anxiety attacks, insomnia, and when he can sleep, nightmares. He is in constant pain and has given up gardening, working on his cars, and listening to music, since none of those activities bring him joy anymore. He can't bear to be in his house, so he lives with relatives nearby. Felix moved to the East Coast to find work with a private technology company and escape the stigma of being a member of the Pan family. He suffers from depression and has become closed off. This is one of the most depressing stories of the decade, as not only was innocent life taken, but the lives of many were ruined. Many wonder if Jennifer Pan had undiagnosed underlying mental disorder, while many believe that her parents' strict parenting style alone drove her to do what she did. It is clear that through years of being oppressed by her parents and weaving intricate lies, Jennifer lived in a sort of fantasy land where her whole life was predicted on a facade that she maintained. While it was clear that her self-image was previously tied to her parents' ideas of success, she failed to develop an identity apart from her parents. As a result, when her reality did not match the projection of success created in her parents' eyes, she devised a plan to eliminate the overarching feeling of being undeserving and substandard at its roots.